Okay, we can start. So switch on your webcam, please. Please, Anna Maria, you can introduce.
Yes. Hello. Have a lovely sunny greetings from Finland. I thank you all participants and our magnificent Ruritage project that we are able to host today a lovely event title related to the food storytelling or storification. And if I may present today two great speakers. First, here is going to be Anne Kalliomäki from Finland. And after her, there will be Gianluca from Italy. He's our Ruritage partner. And I think that I will give now more details about Anne's background. Afterwards, I will tell more about the second speaker. So Anne has been inventing this storification, let's say, term, which is used widely now in Finland. So it's already established about 10 years ago. And Anne has been written many kind of papers, including books and giving seminars, webinars, workshops related to this topic. And also Anne has been developing the special method of storification. And today we are really privileged to hear about her business story and more details about how we can utilize storification in service design and product development and branding. And especially today we have tailored the topic especially related to the food and food SMEs. Welcome, Anne. Floor is yours. And afterwards we will have questions in the end of the whole webinar when Anne and Gianluca have finished their speeches. Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Anna.
Okay.
Thank you, Anna. Let's see that I get my presentation there. We tested with Gianluca, but now. Yes, you can see my presentation, I think. And
yes,
I'm very, very happy to be here today talking about storification in food storytelling, food design together with you. And I said, my name is Anne Kalliomäki and I am here in Tampere, city of Tampere, Finland now. And you are very warmly welcome to join the discussion about storification on social media, and hashtag storification is something that you can use there. And as said, I have been working in the field of storification, in the field of tourism in Finland, and I am very proud to say that I have Santa Claus himself as one of my clients. And these days I am also part of Visit Finland Academy coaches. And how did I start developing the method of storification? It was I have a background in TV and film, and 2006 I met my fictional boss, Story Sheep, as the story goes, in Helsinki, Finland. And I left Helsinki and my TV and media field and followed this Story Sheep in a ways, and found this new passion of mine, how to take that what I have learned in TV and film world, this dramatic storytelling, how to take it to the business world and help companies turn their customer experience into story experience. And my fictional boss, Story Sheep, has summoned its message to us in this picture. So from this crowd that is doing the things in the same way, we should, as company, find our own core story, our own common red thread, and through that create the story experience for our customers. Be very unique, very personal, very authentic in that what we are offering to our customers. And I'm using this common red thread as a symbol for story. I know in Finland we use it and in some other countries as well, but I would very much love to know, is this symbol of red thread a symbol for story in Italy? I don't know that yet. So please, if you can maybe share there in the chat, is that something that you use also? And of course, we have the umbrella of storytelling, under which maybe we can see all the ways we can use story and storytelling. But of course, storytelling, we might see it more as also more about telling stories. And then when we are talking about storification, we are talking about a story that can be experienced by our customers. It's about creating the story world where our customer can kind of step into the story. And I have written a book about storification method, as Anna-Maria already said, and unfortunately it is only available in Finnish at this time, but there is a storification guide on my English webpage that you can go and download and get the summary of this storification method. The storification method starts from defining the core story, and then using that story as a tool to design the service environments, both digital and physical, and then making our service processes into a story, using that same core story also in our marketing communications. And it is something that happens before our service and during the service and also afterwards. So there is a storyline there. And there is a summary of the process of storification. It starts by finding the right story elements and then creating the core story. And of course, as I said, digital and physical story stages, and then creating story experiences. We must use all of these elements that we have in dramatic storytelling also in our company's storification process. Story needs to be something that is felt, seen, tasted, smelled, heard. So it is happening to all of our customers' senses in a ways. There are two questions I think that you should consider when you start using storification. First of them is, what is your style as a story designer? As a company, what kind of story is authentic for you? And the other question is, of course, what's the storification that works for your customers that you are offering your services? And yes, there was this question. I was wondering if you could maybe in the chat where you are putting those questions that we will answer after our presentations. Also, I would like to know that what do you think that are the benefits of storification, and especially in the food and storytelling, thinking about this food and storytelling, why should we use this kind of storification? So then some examples about storification in food design. So in northern Finland, there is this place called Kainuu, and there we have this Arctic giant place that has a story about these 3 giants that you cannot see, but they are living there in this place of Arctic giant, and they have actually built up those bird houses because they very much like the birds. But what ended up happening that the bird houses are so big that they are too big for birds. So that's why they are now offered as a place for people to stay. And also in the Arctic giant, when we are thinking about the food experience they are offering, so they are using this kind of maybe big spoons and big forks and plates and making it somehow seem in the food experience that this is a place of Arctic giants. This picture is, I think it was in August when I was staying in the hotel, and I ordered on my work trip from the restaurant downstairs some mushroom soup and some tea, and there is some forest honey to go with the tea. And I was thinking that these days, now that we are living in this pandemic era still, and of course, I think it's gonna carry on quite a long time. So we need to think about these takeaway packages also, that how to make them into a story. What can you add there to that package? What can make it special for your customer? Can there be maybe a little story under this plate of this soup plate or something like that? And also, of course, the way the package is done. Something that is very important when you start using storification is that you are very clear what is that core story that you are using in your company, and then be clear what is part of your story and what is not. So take away all of those story elements that are not part of your story. So that way you are starting to create more and more this unique, special story experience that only your company can offer. And this is a picture from Tallinn, Old Hansa medieval restaurant, and it's very, very much using the environment and the history of the place in a very beautiful way. And this is something that we should always remember also when we are doing these food experiences, that the story stage is part of your food experience. One of the maybe most used examples in Finland when we are talking about this kind of storytelling in business world is our Kyrö distillery story, and they are very famous in their rye whiskey and gin also outside Finland these days. And I think what is special about Kyrö distillery is that they have been using this local culture in a very kind of fresh way, using that culture, using the surroundings as part of their story, but still making it fun and engaging. So I think this is important, that we should remember that we can freshen up our like local history and local culture, and we should not be afraid of dramatization and using also fictional elements. In the snowman world in Rovaniemi, there are these snowmen, of course, and a couple of years ago, maybe 5 years ago, Petri, who is now owner of the Snowman World, noticed that we are not using snowmen in the Lapland tourism And that's why he created the snowman world. And when we think about this food experience, it is very important that if you are having these characters, how can you use these characters as part of the food experience as well? And can there be like some characters' favorite foods and all of that? Snowman World has named their restaurant First, I think it is First Snow in English. So in naming our food products and all of that, we can also use the names and these like characters and their lives. Magic of Nuuksio is a story of a juniper spirit, and in the national park of Nuuksio, they are using this juniper spirit story. I was wondering, how much time do I have left now? I think I still...
Maybe 5 minutes, I think.
5 minutes, yes, that's good. So maybe in the end we watch the video of the Magic of Nuuksio juniper spirit story, and the video itself might not be so good, but well, it's kind of like quite old video already. But then I think in the video we have been able to combine in quite nice way the food into the story and how the food experience is kind of offered through the story. So maybe we watch that video, and that's something also that you should consider, that you should make this also kind of story trailers and teasers of your story. And also you can use your character story and make these storified dinners around your character if you have these characters in your core story. And there's also interesting ways that we can do with like this digital and physical thing. This is a mobile guide combined to a physical dinner experience in Jyväskylä, and you will get the presentation and these PDF slides, so you can go and check this out if you like and find out more about it also later. It's very interesting that what we can do with this new technology and digitalization. And of course, one of the I think which has gained a lot of followers and fans is skull mapping and their work, and definitely you should go and check out what they are doing with this new technology and creating these stories in these dining experiences. So we should be very open-minded when thinking about using these kind of stories. Okay, maybe I have a couple of minutes left, so we can. Okay, sorry, it's a wrong video. So I'd like to share with you the Juniper spirit story still in the end. Let's see. Sorry about this. Okay, let's see. I've of course lost it when I was supposed to share it, but here it is. Let's see.
Once upon a time, there was a juniper spirit who traveled from the edge of the world towards the far north. The juniper spirit flew on the back of a swan with
We cannot hear the audio.
Yes, thank you so much. So that was Magic of Nuuksio trailer and the Juniper spirit in the Nuuksio National Park forest. And if you want to more info about Storification, you can find that a Storification guide on my webpage, and also I will send those slides of mine to the Ruritage page, so you can check them out also later to find out more. And I am looking forward to also your questions and the discussion later. But now, Gianluca, thank you.
Thank you so much, Anne. I think we went through such magical experience with you during these 20 minutes or so. And as I mentioned, we can discuss afterwards. But now, welcome. I should say, floor is yours, not I need to say, screen is yours. Gianluca Vagnarelli is our dear project manager in Ruritage project, and he comes from the municipality of Appignano del Tronto. But as you are multitasking intelligent guy, you have also founded iStrategies, which is a startup especially specialized in storytelling now. And also you have the position as a lecturer at the communication faculty at the University of Macerata. I hope I pronounced it right. Okay, screen is yours.
Thank you, Anna Maria. It is a real pleasure for me to share with you my experience and the knowledge about storytelling. So I'm going to share the screen. So before starting, just so the title of the presentation is Talk About the People Behind Food. Before starting, a few words about the structure of my presentation. I divided my presentation in two parts. In the first part, I will focus on what storytelling is, very briefly, and why storytelling can be a useful tool for food communication. And in the second part, I will provide 5 tips to improve food communication using a narrative approach. These suggestions are issued from my work experiences and from other cases of interesting food storytelling from my point of view, obviously. We can start saying that storytelling nowadays is a buzzword in the sense that we find storytelling in different fields, the word storytelling. We have, for example, in care professions, the so-called narrative medicine. We have in business corporate storytelling. We have storytelling in politics. And obviously we have storytelling in entertainment. Especially under the pandemic, we experienced a kind of a Netflix society in which we consumed a lot of TV series and stories, okay? So this large use of the word storytelling has made the concept a little bit entirely indeterminate. So for this reason, I think it's useful to recap a little bit what storytelling is. Storytelling, we can say, is a way to is the use of stories as a way to communicate and interact with people. But storytelling is also the ability to use narratives in communication. So in the definition of the storytelling, we have two fundamental elements. So storytelling as an act of telling stories, and storytelling as the ability to do it. But why storytelling can be a useful tool in communication in general, but I think the most interesting aspect for you is why it can be a useful tool in food communication. There are many reasons. I would like to share with you three main reasons. So the first one is that the use of storytelling make your communication memorable. I mean, in the sense that easy to remember, because in a story we usually find a language that is rich in images, that is rich of metaphors. So all these elements helps the memorability of your message. I give you an example of it. For example, if I want to talk about wine, I can use an informative traditional approach, and I could say this wine possesses flavors that are well balanced and so on. Or I could use a narrative approach, using a metaphor in this case. I could say this wine has an elegant taste. You know that the vividness of this expression, this wine has an elegant taste, is immediately and easily understandable and memorable, you know, by the listeners, compared to the other approach, the informative one. So first reason, storytelling helps the memorability of your communication, of your message. Second reason, storytelling is a useful tool in food communication because it is able to increase the interaction among people. In the sense that the stories are not the use of stories is not useful also only for transferring knowledge and information, but also as a way to incentivize social interaction. I give you another example. This is a Facebook page managed by an Italian Facebook page managed by an Italian university student. He's a non-resident student at the Bologna University, so he felt nostalgic at the beginning of his courses, so he decided to create this page that grew very fast, in which he posts stories about the region. He was nostalgic about his region, that is Abruzzo region. So in this post stories, he talked about food, local stories, local identity. And this is, for example, the case of this post in which he talked about a local traditional sweet. And you can see that he collected a lot of comments, shares, and likes. Why? At least for two reasons. First reason, because his communication is, in my personal opinion, an outstanding example of warm communication, so an empathic communication. Second reason, because he is always able to find iconic elements, so elements that are strictly linked to the local identity of that region, that are immediately recognized and shared by the audience. Okay, so this is an example of the fact that the stories are useful to engage audience, because if you have 100 comments or shares, you are able to engage your audience. And this case is interesting for me because this guy, this young student, is not a professional in the field of communication, first. Second, this page is not sponsored. So this post is not sponsored. This post is able to engage people just on the base of the quality of the story, you know. Third reason to use storytelling in food communication, the fact that through stories you can communicate also the meaning of the food, what food represent for us, what food represent in depth for us. For example, if I want to talk about the tradition of coffee, espresso in Italy, but especially in Naples, so in south of Italy, I could talk about using an informative approach. So I could say typical Neapolitan coffee is cheap because an espresso rarely costs over 90 cents. The coffee is served night and day in small cups in the Italian typical bars. So this is the typical informative approach in which the focus is on what, where, and when of the information. So what coffee, where in Naples, and so on. Or I could choose another approach. I could start talking about stories, with a narrative approach in which the focus is on the why, not on what, on the why. So I could say the usage of the suspended coffee started during the Second World War, when in very hard conditions, people used to pay 2 cups of coffee, one for themselves and the other for someone who couldn't afford it. So why this approach is interesting? Because through the story of suspended coffee, this local tradition in Naples, these stories make immediately evident that in Naples, coffee is not only a simple drink, but is considered a kind of, we would say, a fundamental human right that should be guaranteed to everyone, included those who couldn't afford it, okay? So this is an example of the fact that through stories, you can immediately communicate the meaning of the food, what the food represents in depth for people. So through this story, you can really understand what coffee represents for people in Naples, but I could say also for Italians, okay? So now we know what storytelling is and why storytelling is a useful tool in food, can be a useful tool in food communication. Now I would like to share with you 5 practical tips to improve your food communication using a narrative approach. So the first suggestion is be inspired by your everyday stories. To do an effective storytelling, you do not need an Hollywood screenwriter. You should just pay attention about your everyday context that is full of interesting stories. I mean, the stories of your family, if you run, for example, a family business, the stories of your passion for food, the stories about knowledge and abilities necessary for making good products, and so on. So all these elements represent your narrative capital, we could say. So the narrative capital is the raw material that you can use for creating interesting stories. Second suggestion, talk about the people behind the food. Frequently, the food communication is based on how to do approach, so how to prepare good recipes, how to make food, and so on. And this communication is helpful because it makes possible for everyone to prepare good dishes. But in my opinion, if you are also able to tell stories of people who is behind these food processes, you can better engage your audience. Why? Because your audience can recognize themselves in the stories you are telling, so they can empathize with you. This is the second suggestion. The third suggestion is take your time to create food stories. Even you can create interesting stories also using just your Facebook page, sorry. Try using, for example, posting on your Facebook page. But you should take time to create good stories. So the suggestion is pay attention on the quality of your text. That should be understandable, so avoid to use too technical words. That should be readable, so pay attention also on the visual distribution of the text, and use also an informal style in your communication, and try to post also good pictures, because all these elements are able to increase the effectiveness of your food communication. This is just to underline that the compulsory use of social media is not a good attitude, a good condition to become a good storyteller. It is not important the frequency of your posts, it is important the quality of it. So also if you post just one post per month, but try to work on the quality of it. Fourth suggestion, talk about also your obstacles and your problems. A food communication only made by successes, awards, compliments, and great results is not, in my opinion, a good communication, because you should talk also about the problems you have to overcome in your everyday activity. So your difficulties, the challenges you have about your everyday work, because this make your communication more credible on one side, and on the other side permit to the people to recognize themselves also in your story, because our life is a life made by successes, but also problems, challenges to overcome, and so on. Last suggestion, be authentic in the sense that try to be yourself in your communication, but also try to highlight your distinctive elements. Try to create food stories based on your local identity. This is very important, your local culture, because this is an element that can differentiate you, okay? that can distinguish you among others, among your competitor. And my suggestion is also to use words or expressions from a local language, especially if these expressions are strictly linked to the food, we could say to the food heritage, to the food, local identity, because also the some typical linguistic expressions can increase the authenticity and the effectiveness of your message. And in this way, you can better underline your food background, your food story, your food terroir, we could say. So to recap, be inspired by everyday stories around you. Talk about the people behind the food, not only information and knowledge, but also people who is behind the food processes, their passion, take your time to create good stories, talk about also your problems, and be authentic. And try to remember that, to conclude, communication takes place when, in addition to the message, so in addition to information, also pass an extra soul. So soul is very, very important, to combine these two elements. For this reason, I think that to become a good storyteller, you should read not a communication manual, but maybe Dostoevsky or Dumas. So thank you for this, for your attention.
Thank you, Gianluca and both Anne. I think this is now great time to reflect and discuss all these details and ideas, how we can use much more storification storytelling in the future. And I think that I have considered already a few questions, and also the other audience may ask as well. And since you both are such great experts, so I think that could you consider now this storytelling, how it could be used in different sectors? Now we have been discussing about food sector, but is there an advantage to use this kind of methods in every sector? Is it better to some special sectors and not so relevant or not so beneficial to some other sectors? Or do you think that it's suitable for all sectors? And if you have some experience about that, examples. Anne, would you like to start? What do you think about? Anne, microphone, can you turn on microphone?
Sorry, yes. Thank you, Anna-Maria. Yes, I was just thinking that this is like a very nice combination, these two presentations, such a good tips from Gianluca about the storytelling, and then storification is like a bit different way of thinking about the experience side of the using story. I have seen in my own work that I have nowadays been doing this work also outside tourism and this experience sector, and also business to business companies have been using storification, and actually, which might sound quite funny, I've been also teaching our government people on their communication, how can they let's see, turn their projects into more like this story experience to get people involved and engaged in those projects. So I think that there is a lot we can do also outside this.
Yeah, a lot of potential. I have understood. Yes. The same. And Gianluca, do you have your opinion, let's say, from your perspective in Italy, or in what areas you have used or faced these methods?
Yes, yes, I think storytelling is part of the human history, you know, the ability to tell stories. At the beginning, knowledge was transferred orally, you know. So I think it's part of the human being, of the essential elements of the human being. And so nowadays, especially, we live in a kind of narrative society. The experts in economy talk about of narrative economy, for example. So we have storytelling in many different fields. And I think if you use correctly storytelling in a professional way, you can improve your communication and you can make your message more effective. In Italy, we have a certain tradition, for example, in the field of corporate storytelling. We have a lot of corporate museums, for example. So, but now we have storytelling in other fields that before wasn't considered, you know, not a traditional field for storytelling. I think narrative medicine, you know, so care professions, in which they use stories for collecting memories about people and so on. So I think it's a useful tool with great potential, but it is necessary to use it correctly.
Yes, so fascinating. And like you mentioned, it's easier than perhaps to understand the details, especially if there are scientific or very difficult information to, let's say, children or young people. So you can even customize the story according to the consumer group or even the age group. So have you found that kind of, let's say, examples that also even there is the same kind of product or service, so the message or the story has been a little bit different, let's say, related to the consumer segment, if there is young people or old people. So there is this kind of also tailored messages in Storification.
Yes, in Storification there is, of course, because there's this company core story. I think that's the kind of thing that we need to have, this core story, this engage in story identity. What is the story experience we are offering? And then that story becomes alive a bit different ways to our different customer groups. So it's the same character, but different ways for different customer groups. So definitely. And I think that can help that we have this one common red thread to follow, that still it is the same story happening.
Gianluca, you would like to comment something?
Yes, just to say that in communication, it's always useful to target, to involve someone on the base, of a message that is targeted on the base of the group you want to communicate. But another interesting element in storytelling is the fact that we do not consider storytelling as, but in general, communication as a unidirectional process. So storytelling is a very powerful tool to engage people, to engage local communities in a process that become a bidirectional, in which yes, you create the message, but then the message can be changed from a bottom-up approach in a process that become an exchange with your audience. This is a very, very interesting aspect. So because you can have a kind of co-creation of stories. We are trying to try to do it at Appignano, collecting stories starting from the local community. And the role of the local community is crucial in this way. You know, so stories as a way to incentivize participation, to stimulate participation, and more general, to create community building.
Yes, it can be used in so many ways. And in fact, also, like we were hearing previous week, the consumer-oriented approach as well. So when we have the understanding of the consumers, the segment, so we have collected that information, silent signals of some specific group. So we can use even their language and their attitudes or atmospheres and those ideas, what has come from them, and reflect those ideas when we create also the story as a marketing tool, for example, that we can understand and also communicate much better to that segment. And also, I think that, like you said, it's very engaging. So storification, storytelling also integrates much more feelings, authentic issues. So I think it's very powerful, like you mentioned as well. But I would like to say that it would be very fascinating even to study the difference before and after you have used these storification storytelling methods. And I suppose, of course, that could be even another topic for the webinar. There is a research probably made, and there can be these seen these effects and impacts after you have been using very powerful storification storytelling. And that could be a very good example for also companies and other organizations to understand that it's really important to make the message clear. And sometimes the storification, it's the best, depending, of course, the segment. Sometimes informative message is good, perhaps in some occasions, but sometimes it helps. What do you think? Are there some studies made, have you noticed, and the impact?
Yes, if I add something on this, as Anne knows well, storytelling is, you know, is a sense-making process, you know. So when you start telling stories, this is not only a passive process, it's an active process in you, in which you, while you're telling stories, you start reflecting on yourself, on your identity, on your past or your experience, you know, and this changed you. For example, in my experience, in some cases of corporate storytelling, at the end of the project, of the corporate storytelling project, the company decided, you know, to rethink the company strategies, because at the end of this telling process, this process of telling stories, they reconsidered a little bit their identity and their priority, thanks to the stories they told. So this is not, and this is an aspect that is not considered when we talk about storytelling, because when we talk about storytelling, especially with company, they consider storytelling mainly as a tool for an effective external communication, okay? So to be more effective toward the clients and so on. But storytelling is a powerful tool also to change organization. So as a way to start reflecting on them and reconsidering their priorities, strategies, and so on.
Yeah, definitely. I need to say there that definitely so. And storification actually does not work if it does not, if the company inside the people, the team is not, don't feel that the story is right and are not into that story. And so it's very important that the employee experience and all of that, how can how the story becomes alive inside the company, and then it can become alive for customers. So it's very important. And I think in the there is quite a lot of course, research done on storytelling, and there was one done on the Magic of Nuuksio project. They did the test of this kind of forest walk where there was like no storification, and then there was this storification, the Juniper spirit story included in that walk, in that experience. And they found interesting things. There was something that also made people maybe somehow more present in that moment in a ways when there was story. But of course, in some ways, it was also something that maybe brought people more into their own thoughts as well, because there was the storyline that started running in their heads. So it was very interesting, but many of them felt that the experience was somehow deeper and different, of course, with the story. But in some ways also without the story, they were more maybe focused on the outside. So it was interesting.
Okay, thank you. By the way, there are a few questions from the audience as well, and audience also may ask now. So I think in some level you already responded, but is there any research showing that there is a difference in impact if there is that informative way or narrative way to share information?
In my experience, for example, we organized at the end of a corporate storytelling project a focus group with company employees to measure with this, focus group. So it's a qualitative research method, not quantitative, to evaluate what was the impact of the story of this company on the company employees. So we experienced that it was changed, what the sense of belonging to the company, because thanks to the stories of the company, they could better understand company stories, company values, and so the sense of belonging to the company increased a lot after the end of this project. But I think to introduce some KPI, it's the next challenge, to evaluate better what can be the impact of this kind of project that, it's difficult to measure, but I think it is necessary to evaluate in some way what a storytelling project can generate, can produce.
Okay, thanks. This has been great discussion. And I suppose if there are not any more coming questions, so I think we should thank the both experts so much. And I think that this has been increasing also so much about understanding this theme and topic, and also the method itself, that it could be used more. Anne, yes?
Please let me know, do you have in Italy this symbol of story, common red thread? Do you use this metaphor? Because no, you don't. Okay, that's a good thing to know, because in
my experience, no, I think no, but maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, Germany, yeah, Martina is saying that they have concepts of common red thread. Yes, because I think in English, in England, UK, they have.
Maybe yes,
in Germany as well. In our
yes, maybe yes. If you mean the filo rosso in Italian is code.
Yes,
something that connect different points.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very much. And actually the story goes, I think in UK, the story of common red thread, why it's used as a symbol for story is that they used to, in UK, in Navy, when they tied those ropes, they put the little red thread inside those ropes. so they would not break so easily. And if somebody tried to steal the rope, it was not so easy to steal the rope because there was this little red thread inside the rope. So it was, if you steal it, it broke and it was not usable anymore. And so I think it's a good metaphor what happens when you use story in your company. It's you have a strong brand. It's not so easily, you cannot steal it so easily, and it's easy for your customer to follow your customer journey, the service path.
Anna-Maria, I think there is a question on Facebook.
Okay,
so
we
Igor,
can check that together. I haven't not yet noticed that, but let's check that one.
Igor Yanaki, what do you think, how is better to interpret food? By storytelling about food or just using 5 senses during the tasting of food?
I think for combining story and the experience is the message of, like, I think is the message of storification, that you have the story, but you have everything that you include in the experience is you have considered everything that it's part of the story you want to create for your customer. Yes, I agree in the sense that storytelling is something that cannot substitute, obviously, you know, the tasting. That is not, can be, you know, you can't substitute with storytelling the taste. You can combine both, and storytelling, that is something that you can use in communication, but then you need practical tasting, you know. Yeah, definitely. And I was thinking that before we talked about that co-creation and all of that, I think in storification, what we are aiming for is that we are not, the clients and customers are not like this, they are not passively just receiving the story, but they are being active and being part of the story, and they can even affect how the story goes, what happens next. There can be even this kind of gamification, storification, improvisation thing happening, and that's why it is so powerful. I think that people become part of the story, and they can even kind of affect how the story goes in the experience themselves inside the story.
Yeah, I think that after these great experts, we are able to choose so inspirational, magical, tasteful stories, as we understand now the potential so much. Are there some other questions, Gianluca?
No.
I think then we should remind all the other participants that next week we have our last, the final 5th webinar related to the digital news solutions. So at the same time, next week, Thursday, so we shall meet each other again. And I think that now we have such a great story coming. We have understood each other in such a lovely way, and we can continue perhaps the future project in this storification, storytelling, utilizing those aspects as well more. Thank you, Anne, and all the other participants.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, see you. Thank you. Keep in touch.